Welcome to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo, where we blend rock solid tips with a little bit of magic. I'm Renee Bowen, your host, life and business coach, and professional photographer at your service. We are all about getting creative, diving into your business, and playing with manifestation over here. So, are you ready to get inspired and have some fun? Let's dive in. Hey friends, welcome back to Tried and True with a Dash of Woo. I'm your host, Renee Bowen. And I am so glad that you are here with me again. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking with Seline Shenoy, and she is an author, a blogger, and a podcaster. And her work focuses on personal development, self-esteem, productivity, and culture. She has a really amazing online community called The Dream Catcher, and that is aimed at encouraging thousands of readers and listeners every month from all over the world to live their dream lives and to make a difference in the world. Her mission is to help people live up to their truest potential. And you know that I love that because I'm always talking about how part of my mission is to help you be the most you that you can be. And so our conversation today really dives into all of that. But first, I want to just mention very quickly before we jump into this chat that I had with her, I want to just mention real quick that Elevate signups are closing this week. So you only have until this Friday to apply to join us because we start in July. Now, Elevate's ongoing. Like I've been doing Elevate now for years. So if you're a female photographer and you're not a brand new photographer, listen up because this could be the perfect community for you. I've run this group cohort various different ways over the years. And a lot of the people who are in it were either working one-on-one with me to begin with and then went into this small group, or they've just been in Elevate for years because I've run it now for about 5 years and it's a 6-month commitment. So when you sign up, you are signing up from July through December of this year, and you can either pay in full or you can do it monthly. But it's kind of an incredible value because you also get a one-on-one coaching call with me during that time, as well as 2 group coaching calls a month where I actually hot seat coach you. So it's not like a webinar where you just hop on with like a lot of people and you don't get to ask any questions. This is really built for you, the female photographer who is looking for help with marketing. Maybe you need clients, maybe you need to raise your prices, maybe you need to tweak something about your business that's not working as well as you want it to work, or you want to reach a new audience. Maybe you're doing a pivot. All that to say, we talk a lot about the business side of things, the marketing, the blogging, all of the different things that you need to be doing, social media marketing, but it's not just social media. Okay. Like if you're just relying on social media for your marketing, just as a side note, that's not a really sustainable way to continue bringing in the right clients. So we talk a lot about marketing across the board. Okay. But it's very individualized because this group is small. So it's under 20 people always. I never take more than that. And usually we hover somewhere around between 10 and 15. I like to keep it small. I don't like to have a big group because I want to be able to hot seat coach you on these calls. It's not just about me, coming on teaching you something. There is a lot of that as well. But it's really about me helping you troubleshoot what you need help with, whether that's strategy or mindset. So all the mindset stuff is really built into it because it's me. I can't not build it in there because I can teach you all the things and I can give you all the blueprints, but unless you actually clear some of that head trash, you're not going to do it. So it's both of those things. Okay. It is literally me having a coach in your back pocket because you get me on Voxer as well inside of our group thread. And you get to ask me questions for 6 months about anything that you are having issues with. It could be things like, I'm having an issue, with this one particular client. I can't get paid, or I'm chasing somebody down, or can you help me rewrite this email to a client? Or I can't get clients. I am literally drowning here. Whatever it is, I'm going to help you do it. So it's very, very high touch. And the price point is not anywhere close to what it's worth. Like it's worth well over $6,000 and you're getting this for a very low price. So if you need coaching, but you can't really do the one-on-one investment, this is definitely a great option for you, but you need to hurry up and apply now because I am closing the signups down and I don't take just everybody. I got to make sure that the vibes are right because like I said, most of the people who are in Elevate have been in there for years. They re-enroll every semester. And so I'm very protective of our group and of our energy. And I also don't want that to intimidate you. Okay. Like, don't think that, oh, there's no place for me there because this is a tight knit group. That's not true at all. It's a very welcoming, very supportive group. Like, you're not going to find any mean girl mentality in here. And a big part of why that is because I'm very selective about who I allow into our universe because we have created such a really awesome vibe there and everyone is so supportive. So you get coaching from me, but you also get really great insights from the rest of this group because these photographers are really awesome as well. So you learn from everyone and you have support built in. It's a place where you can come and talk about something super vulnerable and you're going to feel safe doing that. And I'm very, very proud of what we've created. So I'd love to invite you in if this feels in alignment to you, if you feel like you need something. The link is below to the page that talks a lot more about it and it tells you exactly what's included because you also get a lot of my courses included. So there's an online portal where you can access a lot of education and a lot of resources, as well as the calls per month, as well as the Voxer community. So you get a lot for not a lot of money. And yes, I have been asked why I don't charge 5 times more for this. And the reason is mainly because it's kind of a passion project for me at this point. Like, I love the people in it so much, and I want to continue fostering that for them. And so I kind of do it for them at the end of the day. Like, it is a lot of work and it does take a lot of me to be a part of it, but I really, really love doing it. And I feel like we are making a difference, not just in our own businesses and our lives, but to each other. And when we create something like this, when we create this type of, high frequency, energetic sequence that this entire group carries, that we're going to have a ripple effect out into the world and we are making the world a better place. And right now, I don't know about you, but that kind of keeps me going because the world can feel really dark and crazy and you can feel very alone. You can feel very isolated in your business. Like, who cares about what I'm doing? And why am I trying to do something like this when the world seems to be burning? Well, being a part of this group actually helps me as well as everyone else in the group feel like we are doing something bigger than ourselves and that we aren't alone. We are in community. We are there for each other. And that makes a huge difference. It just does. So if that speaks to you, go ahead and apply and let's chat about what that looks like for you. And if you need more one-on-one support, I do have one spot open for that as well. So that link is below too. We do need to hop on a call for that to see if we vibe. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this conversation I had with Seline. You're going to love her. Hey, Seline, thanks so much for being here today. I want to dive right into this core concept of the nomadic soul. So we'll get into a little bit about what you do, who you are, but I'm fascinated by this because I think that so many of us, especially creative entrepreneurs, which is most of my listeners here, a lot of us don't follow the conventional path. Like, we kind of feel like we struggle maybe to fit into a certain mold, or like maybe feel like we don't really belong in these traditional structures, whether it's career or life. So I'd love to know what your concept of the nomadic soul really kind of means and why it could be such a powerful framework for those of us who align with that.
First of all, I want to thank you, Renee, for having me on the show. It is such a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to you and your audience. The nomadic soul, I can say it's come from the pains that I suffered as a creative person, like everyone else in your audience. I mean, I myself have felt like a misfit for the longest time in my life. And in a lot of ways, I felt like I was restricted in the circumstances that I grew up in. Not in terms of my personal freedoms, but in terms of who I wanted to become. I wanted to break out of the mold and not be fall into that sort of role that was laid out for me. That's not something I wanted. So I thought about what would make it okay for a person like me and other creatives to feel like we are unfettered and that we can kind of color outside the line, so to speak. So for that reason, I came up with a archetype, which I call the nomadic soul, to kind of describe that urge that we all have to explore both the world within us and the world around us. And I thought that it really embodies the explorer spirit that urges us to think outside the box and to move beyond the limitations that are around us. And it gives us permission to live beyond the labels that have been placed upon us. And the reason why I think this is valuable is because it can really allow us to explore life's biggest questions and to really look at life at a deeper level and not just live on the surface of things. So I think it really taps into that part of us that really wants to do more, be more, and have more, and just evolve into the person that we're meant to be, and go beyond the labels, the societal pressures that are typically placed upon us. So the nomadic soul is sort of like my way of saying that, hey, it's okay. It's okay to be you. It's okay to tap into your authenticity and to blaze your own trail. So, yeah.
I love that. I mean, I've kind of always felt, and I talk about this a lot just in general, like on platforms, my socials and things like that, about how myself and a lot of creatives that I know, we have like this push pull of wanting this freedom, really, because honestly, like, yeah, you might think that you want to make a lot of money, but really, like, it's the freedom you want, right? Like, it's the freedom that
True.
this business is going to give you, right? I feel like freedom and like this untethered soul is like speaks to so many of us. And I don't think it's just generational either. I think this is like across the board, like what I'm seeing just in my communities and just in the world today. I feel like so many people are craving like-minded, peers who also are drawn to that sort of lifestyle. What not necessarily, maybe you may not want to go out and like live out of your van and work, from anywhere, like maybe you do, but I don't feel like that's necessarily what we're talking about. I feel like this is more of a internal nudge, right? For this
Hmm.
this searching. And I kind of feel like I've been, on that path my whole life. So this push pull though between like freedom and stability. I feel like a lot of us have that, like, well, I want this, but I also feel like I need to be, quote unquote, stable, whatever that means to somebody.
Have some roots.
Yeah, exactly. So how can we create, in your opinion, a good foundation that allows for both?
That's a really good question. And that's something that I've struggled with for most
Yeah,
of my
same.
life. And I think it really comes down to really thinking about what your values are. What are your core values? What matters most to you? Because, you know, we have a lot of options these days. I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. We have so many things we can do, now with the internet and AI, the sky is the limit. Like in terms of professionally, we can do anything. Like if you want to start our own, Etsy shop, if we want to create our own online business, if we want to start our, coaching services, whatever, we can do anything. Like if we get the right monetization model and we're doing a good job, then we can start making money. So um, I think what we have to do is really hone in on what's important to us. And, that's why the first chapter that I have in the book is about developing an authentic identity because we are multidimensional beings and we have to get acquainted with all parts of us. It all starts with us. And once we understand what's important to us and what we're willing to compromise on, I think it'll be pretty self-evident about what will give us that feeling of rootedness, because that can be different for so many people. If, like, for some people, they need like the traditional ways. They want a home, they want kids, they want to be married, they want the white picket fence, so to speak. And for others, that would be too constraining. For them, it might be like, hey, I can feel rooted anywhere I go. Maybe they want a more nomadic lifestyle, right? So it's about figuring out what your definition of rootedness and home is. And once you do that, then you need to figure out, okay, what is it that's going to give me that sense of novelty and allow me to feel like uh I'm living in an expansive exploratory state because we do need that. I know Tony Robbins talks a lot about, I believe he calls them the five needs. So
Hmm.
he says that human beings, like we have a need for certainty and
Yeah.
uncertainty at the same time, but we all need them in different doses. Because if we're having too much certainty, we'll get bored out of our minds. If we're having
Hmm.
too much uncertainty, we'll feel like we don't have those roots. We'll feel like we're all over the place. So we need something that anchors us, and we need something that also allows us to play, to explore, and to be curious about what's out there. So I think it's about finding the right balance for us and what gives us that sense of certainty and uncertainty, that sense of freedom and that sense of connectedness.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I definitely know what you're saying here. The uncertainty and the certainty. Yeah, this dichotomy. And I feel like a lot of that is, obviously tied to our unconscious programming and all of that as well. But I feel also like this foundation, right? I want to kind of like dive a little bit into that identity piece because especially with I see a lot of women especially as their lives change, right? As our maybe we get married, maybe we have kids, maybe we don't, but all of these little different pieces add to this identity piece. And if you don't have a strong sort of foundation of who you are outside of all of that before those things happen, right? It can feel like you're just sort of like taking on all of these new identities, if that makes sense. And I think
Mm-hmm.
some people have more of a propensity, let's say, to tack on different things, right? Like take on these identities as these things happen and like shape their lives. So a lot of times I see what happen is women will eventually like they've been married for a while, maybe they have been running a business or maybe they start a business while all these things are changing and then they have kids and then all of a sudden like everything becomes about that. And so I want to kind of speak to like the foundational piece of identity first because I feel like self-awareness and all of these different self-awareness tools that we have resources around us to use to build this. What is something that you see and in your work and the clients that you work with, what helps creatives with spicy brains who are constantly being inundated with all the things? What's a good place for us to start with that as far as like, okay, well, I want to like really hone into what I'm about and my true purpose and my core foundation, my identity, and like what am I about, like who am I really at my core? Yes, I'll change over time, but what are some of those things that you do and work with your clients to help people really develop that and stand in the confidence saying it?
Okay, so I want to first address that the point you made about women taking on different roles and feeling pressured to like live up to a certain role at certain stage of their life. For instance, being a parent, when they have a newborn child, they can feel like that's all their life is about.
Mhm.
And if something like that happens to you, I just say give yourself some grace and remember that you are a multidimensional being. Like your identity is fluid, it's malleable, and it will keep changing as time progresses. As you age, as you change jobs, as you start new businesses, as you have different relationships, each chapter of your life is going to require different aspects of you to become active, and some will become dormant. So I have to point that out and be open to reinventing yourself as things change. I made the mistake that my sense of self has to be set in stone. Like I have to be this way. This is who I am. And I really like boxed myself in when I was younger. And then, as I started getting to my mid to late 30s and now I'm in my early 40s, I just said, no, that's not how it works. Like I gotta have space, like to just move around, to experiment and try different iterations of what I'm doing and what I'm thinking. So having that experimental attitude about developing your identity is really key. And it gives you that freedom to really evolve as a person because you can only learn what makes you tick when you experiment, when you try different things. Now, having said that, I do think it's important to have a core part of you that is unshakable, that's unmovable. And as I've mentioned before, that involves knowing your ethics, your values, your personal standards, and really defining that. That becomes important, especially when you're thinking about what to support in your life and who to support. Because if you don't have that, you're easily swayed by anything like dogma or someone who's trying to take advantage of you and they can easily brainwash you. Why do young people, why are they the ones who are most susceptible to like cults or, these kind of organizations that are kind of out there to prey and get people involved in their agenda? It's because they don't know what they're about. So you don't want to be that kind of person. You don't want to be someone who's easily swayed by the latest fad in the zeitgeist. You don't want that. You have to be aware of what you are about. And if you do want to consider, a new way of being, a new way of thinking, you should use discernment and not just, be so porous to these ideas. So that's why I think getting in touch with that core part of you is essential. And in my chapter about identity, I introduce a framework called the onion, the identity onion. So it's like obviously you've seen an onion, right? It has different layers. So the top layer is like that's your most superficial layer. It's like the roles, everyday roles you play that's visible to the world. Like, yeah, I'm a doctor, I'm a mom, or I'm a Democrat or conservative, whatever. But what they can't see is what you're all about deep down inside. That is not visible. And that is something that you need to express into the world. And I think one of the best ways to do that is through creative hobbies or, even the work that you do to really bring that authentic part of you, like really reveal that to the world. I think the people who do the best work and who are most appealing to the masses are the ones who display that kind of authenticity because it seems like they're real and it's coming from a real place within them. And that, you can tell, I'm sure, like you, Renee, when you're dealing with people and you've done this work for a long time, I think your BS meter is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
When you're dealing with somebody who's just like,
Oh,
they're just
yeah.
saying stuff and that they don't mean it or they're just trying to like impress you. There's no substance there. And the substance comes from being in touch with that core part of you. That's what it's
Yes.
all about. That's when you're dealing with a real one, someone who is speaking from their heart, who is channeling inspiration from their spirit, their soul, whatever you want to call it. And I think as you get older, you become more attuned to it. I know I have, and I'm sure you have, and maybe a lot of your audience has as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I'm in my 50s now, and yeah, you're right. Like I feel like in my early 40s is where I started really kind of exploring a lot of that in a different way. I mean, I've kind of been on that journey for a long time, I feel like, but I want to kind of go back to this concept of authenticity, right? Like that word gets thrown around a lot, but this is what people mean when they say that, especially like your brand online. We're always hearing about, oh, show up authentically. But I think we've used it so much now that it's gotten like
Yeah.
so glossed over and people are like, it's not real. Even like, because obviously with AI and everything now, it's really hard to even discern sometimes what is real. And so I feel like a big piece of it, and maybe we can speak to that a little bit, is if you are easily swayed, right? If you are easily swayed and you are, maybe super distracted and really having a hard time trying to find that voice, a lot of it has to do with the fact that you're not yourself super connected to your soul's
Sure.
purpose. Because I feel like when you have a very deeper sense of who you are, let's say, and this identity that we're talking about, like I kind of call it the golden thread of everything that you do, right? Like I believe that our purpose and our why is not really about what we do. That's how we express it. It's a piece of how we express it, but like it's not who we are, right? It's just like a something that we wear, let's say. But your purpose and your true purpose and your true your why, like why you're here on this planet, like why you do everything that you do. I feel like that is something that is a really hard thing for people to get to because I work with people on this one on one. And when they think they've gotten there, I'm like, no, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. And when you sort of like hit it, but I feel like most people tend to stay on the surface because we've kind of been taught too and programmed that we really shouldn't be talking about ourselves and, like that's so self-indulgent. But like, really, this is the best and most important work that you can do, not just for your business, but for yourself so that you can live a more truly fulfilled life. I just really believe that. And I feel like this sense of entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, especially trying to show up authentically, that's where that might be the gateway, right? Where they start figuring out like, oh, well, I need to start showing every piece of my life. No, not necessarily. What matters is who you are and how well you know that. Because like you said, people have a BS meter and you can tell when people are
Oh yeah.
just trying to fake it because they want views or they want whatever. Like you can't really fake that true authenticity. And so I don't know. Do you agree, first of all, that in order to really have that discernment and, to see it in our outside world, that you need to sort of like have it within as well first?
Yeah, I like to say you have to date yourself a lot.
Yeah.
Go on a date with yourself. And fortunately, I don't mind spending time by myself. I love like solitary time, and that's not the case for everybody, but I think we need to schedule some of that time. And I know like this has been discussed a lot, especially in our own circles of this personal growth circles. But I have to emphasize that unless you get to know who you are and spend that quality time with you, you wouldn't know what you're all about. Because we grew up with people telling us who we are and who we should be. And we can easily fall in line with those expectations or those social mores that are out there. And the stronger your culture, like if you come from a culture like mine that's collectivistic, it's all laid out for you already. Like, so I mean, pushing back against that and be like, hey, wait a minute, like let me first figure out what I want and what I'm all about. And that comes from being like creating those boundaries and really prioritizing me time and engaging in activities where you can delve into that inner exploration, whether that's journaling, whether that's talking to a coach or a therapist, like really doing a deep dive into your internal world. And then I think it's important to put that into action. It shouldn't be all talk and just reflection. You need to like go out into the world and as I know I use this word a lot, but experiment, put it into action, see what makes you tick. If if you're trying to find out what your purpose is, you got to try stuff out. You got to
Mhm.
see what's working, what's not working, what is resonating with you, what's not resonating with you. And I think the earlier we start this, the better, because we'll have a wider time horizon. But even if, you're later in your life, it's fine. It's never too late to do anything, right? The key is to have an open-mindedness, be curious. Don't be afraid to fail or to get things wrong. I think a lot of us get mired in those worries like if I do this I'm going to look stupid, or if I do this I don't know
Mhm.
what people are going to say. um Really don't bother, like just I never cared. I did whatever I wanted to do, and if I failed, if I made a blunder, it's cool. I'm going to use that as a lesson, and that's going to give me information about my next step, you know
Yeah.
so with purpose work we can't be timid. We have to be like, hey, this is a spiritual big job. Like I have got to like give it my all, and I've got to keep trying. And I think it's important to also have a supportive network, mentors, coaches who give us space to do that, give us the encouragement that we need, because it's not easy doing this work, right? You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to like, be willing to look stupid sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
So I think having a supportive network or even just one person who says, go for it. Like just go for it. I'm here for you, if you mess up. Yeah, so I think that is the best approach to take. If
Yeah.
you're trying to find your purpose and you're trying to be authentic, and it comes from trial and error. If you are one of the fortunate ones who had parents who really honed your sense of self, who allowed you to do all those things, like do whatever you wanted, and just uh, didn't kind of project their dreams and their expectations on you, then great. You're one of the lucky few. But if you're not in that category or those pool of people, then you got to do it yourself, as soon as you can.
Yeah, that is a big piece of it for sure. I think
Yeah.
most of us, maybe not all of us, but definitely there's a large percentage of creatives, I feel like, who probably felt a little misunderstood as kids, especially those of
Hmm.
us, like in around my age group or older too. Like it just wasn't,
Gen Xers?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Gen Xers, we're kind of, we were sort of, and I have like, I am definitely Gen X, but I wasn't raised like a lot of Gen Xers were. My mom had me really young and she was one of like 10 kids. So I was born into a very large, loud family who, yes, was conservative, deep South, but they also like filled with creativity, like everyone played music and it was just like a different sort of a different time. And I was definitely raised in that way where it was like, okay, be yourself, find out who that is, like try a lot of different things, experiment. Because that experimentation, like you just mentioned, is a really big piece of it. People are really afraid to experiment because they're afraid to fail. And I feel like that is what's holding so many people. I know it's what's holding a lot of people back because I see it in my coaching. People are afraid to fail because we feel like we've got this level of perfection that we have to attain.
Yeah.
A lot of that is that programming, wherever it comes from, that's a really big piece that if you're running up against that and you're feeling like stifled, like I can't put myself out there or I can't like really tune into who I truly am, I feel like a lot of it probably has to do with the fact that you got some programming around needing to be perfect. And we hear it all the time, but it's true. You're never going to be perfect. You're not supposed to be perfect. It's about who you're becoming along the way. That's literally like this unfolding of who you are. And so I'm very fortunate in that way. I feel like because I was definitely raised with that mentality of you can be creative and successful. You can, find your own path. And I had some kind of freedom that I think a lot of my peers probably didn't. And I also had involved parents. Like my mom was there. Like I wasn't super feral. I wasn't like raising myself like a lot of us Gen Xers have. Like a lot of people in my generation didn't have the parental involvement. Um, I did. And so I feel like that definitely colors who we are as adults for sure, and definitely how we raise our own kids. But I feel like wherever it comes from, if this is being presented, if you're listening and you feel like, okay, I really don't know how to even access this piece of myself, like I feel like there is a disconnect. I feel like maybe have gotten to this point in my life and things have been fine, but like I want them to be amazing, right? Like I want to actually live a full and vibrant life and not just okay. So for those people listening who might feel like that and might feel disconnected from their authentic self, what are some practical steps that you would suggest people take to realign? Obviously, we've kind of mentioned getting back in touch with yourself, going date yourself. I love that analogy because it's so true. Like a lot of people have that fear of being alone with themselves. So I think that's definitely one of them. What else would you say would be some good suggestions for those people?
So a suggestion for people who feel like they've lost touch with their authentic self.
Yes.
Okay. Well, besides reconnecting with the truth of who you are, well, what works for me is, talking with somebody about it. I have a brilliant therapist who I speak with, and she has a trained ear, so she's able to give some form to the amorphous kind of thoughts and emotions that I'm having. And she gives it some form and she tells me, look, this is what's going on with you. And, we kind of brainstorm and figure out, okay, what can I do to demystify whatever I'm feeling or this urge that I'm having to do something in my life, because sometimes it you need another person to actually reflect back to you
Right.
that
Yeah.
what you cannot see. So that works for me. If you don't want to get a therapist, have a friend, get a friend or a family member who you think who obviously has your best interest at heart and who could actually give you some constructive advice, or feedback. And I would also say, engage in a sense of play. Like, I think sometimes we take ourselves too seriously, and all of this can feel very heavy. Maybe just unplugging and doing something fun, like whatever you find fun, whether that is like just playing a sport or going on a weekend getaway. Getting in that space of play and fun can kind of refresh you and give you a blank slate to start on. And I think you'll find new ideas kind of sprouting and new breakthroughs that might just come through because you're putting yourself in a space that does not feel constrained. And I think when you're in that container, you'd be surprised like what kind of things can bubble up in you. So I think that's something that could help for
Yeah, for
sure.
sure. I always tell people to try and get curious, instead of
Yeah.
judging, because I think a lot of our go-to is to judge ourselves. Again, it's programming, right?
Oh yeah, the inner critic.
Mhm. It's not really your voice and it's not your intuition. It's programming. Unfortunately, some people have a very loud inner critic, and it can be really hard to kind of push that aside or even just deal with it in general. So, if you can kind of look at something, even if you're in this place of like, oh my gosh, I feel like completely disconnected. I don't know what I'm doing with myself. Like it can feel really chaotic and can feel really heavy. Try to not judge yourself, first of all, like, just kind of let yourself off the hook and just look at it with neutrality, at least, kind of getting to that neutral place of like, okay, so this is where I'm at. All right, this, that is like the next step to the reframe, because you have a decision, you have a choice to look at it as I'm going to be here forever. This is doom and gloom. You know what I mean? This is I feel stuck, or this could go in a whole different direction and be like, I wonder what else is here for me. So I wonder what this is about. Just getting curious. Like you don't have to have the answers right away, but just starting to ask yourself those questions can be a really powerful gateway into getting to that next step of reframing and creating the life that you want. And I always think that if you're in that place, well, first of all, I really believe that wherever you are is where you're meant to be. But if this is coming up for you, I feel like it's a great opportunity because it means you're really about to crack that
Yeah,
open.
you're on the verge of a breakthrough.
Yeah. And I think that, it can be very exciting if you allow it to be,
Mm.
because we know that anxiety and excitement produce the same chemicals in our brain. And so instead of feeling fear around it, you can switch it and say, no, I'm just excited about this. You have to sort of like gaslight yourself a little bit into thinking,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? To sort of like kind of get you through to that next piece of, okay, yes, this is triggering and it might be scary, but it could also be exciting if I allow it to be. And will I allow it to be? But I know you also speak a lot about, and in your book and just in everything that you do, you talk a lot about the sense of connection, like you brought up before. Like I really believe that that's a huge piece of it too, is like not feeling isolated. Yes, spending time with yourself, but not isolating. Really kind of connecting with other like-minded people is super important. And you also talk about the impact of cultures and how that's really shaped you and what you do because you've traveled a lot. So talk to me a little bit about that. I'd love to know a little bit about that piece of your background and how that really helped shape you and what you do, and even, for your book as well.
So the role of culture in my life. Wow. Well, Let me start from the beginning. I grew up in the Indian culture, and it's what we call a collectivistic culture, where the focus is on the group versus the individual. So you are expected to kind of adhere to kind of those group norms as opposed to trying to just be a rugged individual who's like kind of doing their own thing and trying to just create a life that they can call their own, and growing up in a collectivistic culture had its own set of challenges. Luckily, in the continuum of collectivism, my parents were more on the liberal side. They were more open-minded, which was great. And that's the reason why we traveled a lot. Growing up, I was exposed to a lot of cultures. We traveled to Europe, the US, we traveled to the US a lot. So having that exposure to all these various ways of thinking and being give me this sort of kaleidoscopic view of human behavior, and um, and it made me realize that there's no one way of doing things. There's no one way of being, and to kind of put yourself in like a box and just be like, oh, this is my world. This is the way I need to think because that's the way my group thinks, and have this sort of a la carte approach to life. Like I do like some of the beliefs that this group has. I like some of the beliefs that this group has. I like the fun, carefree attitude of the Latin people. Not to say all of them are like that, but
Right.
the passionate ways of the Latin people. Or I like the attention to detail of the Germans or the Scandinavians to kind of borrow a little bit from every social group and culture that you're exposed to. And I thought that worked for me. And I developed what we call a global citizen identity. And I got a lot of shame for it by the patriots that I knew, the Indian patriots. They're like, "Oh, what do you think of yourself?" Like, yeah, and they would like say things to me in our own native language, and oh, you can't speak the language because I English is my first language. I'm a native English speaker. I never learned any other language, so they would give me crap for that, and really let it get to me growing up, and especially when I was a teenager, and I was a bit lost for a while, until I went to study in the US and I lived in other countries, and I found this more global minded community, and I realized that there was nothing wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with just because I was not super patriotic, or just because I didn't speak the language, or because I didn't celebrate Independence Day or whatever. There was nothing wrong with me. That it was fine for me to take on this sort of nomadic I sort of approach to life, and to allow myself to kind of borrow pieces of culture and behaviors and habits or anything, whatever I wanted from other parts of the world. And that was so liberating for me, Renee. And that became my superpower. That's something I integrated into my sense of self. And it makes it so easy for me to interact with people from other parts of the world, and I started seeing it more as a strength versus a weakness. So yeah, you're right in pointing out that culture is a huge part of my journey and trying to figure out my cultural identity, because I have been exposed to so many, and I grew up in a melting pot of Dubai. It's a melting pot. We have people from different parts of the world here. So going to an international school, that was also kind of confusing for me. And strangely enough, when I moved to the United States, it's very different living there than visiting. So I had a little bit of culture shock also when I was having the typical American college experience. Certain things that seemed a bit strange to me, but then I sort of, I found my way there. And I started loving the American college life, and I made the best of my experience. And then, yeah, so it's been quite an interesting journey.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's like so completely different than the way that I grew up, right? For instance, I mean, I came from a one traffic light town in Louisiana where,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
like literally one traffic light and very rural in the middle of nowhere. And,
Oh, okay.
very, very, very different. And so as a child, I dreamed about being in a big city, and traveling. And I never had the opportunity to really travel. Like I didn't really travel. Well, I didn't travel outside of the United States until I was in my 40s. And I traveled in the United States pretty extensively because, you could kind of get in a car and do that. And I did move to Hawaii sort of on a whim during college for like a little break of a semester and came back. But that was kind of the extent of it. And I always wanted to have that sort of like life experience. I always felt really compelled to go and see and do, even though like I was surrounded by, everyone around me. That's not what we did, right? Like that's not something that a lot of people could or wanted to even do, but I did. And so I think that it's just so interesting because you don't know, you don't know. And, thinking
Right.
about like the way that you grew up and the way that you were able to be exposed at such a young age to a lot of different cultures and people and ideas and things like that. It really does shape you. And I feel like even if you don't have that opportunity like myself to do that until later, like you said before, there's always time, first of all, like, you know what I mean? If you're here, you've got time. So
Sure.
make the most of that. And maybe if you can't physically go do that right now, there are other ways you can do it. There are things that you can, we have so much technology now that kind of allow us to be exposed. But I feel like the biggest sort of takeaway here is that you're open to it. You know what I mean? Just like being open
Yeah.
to what you don't know is such a huge doorway to open for yourself, because this idea of being a nomadic soul, coming back to the title of the book, and I know that you go into all of these things a lot deeper in the book, and we'll definitely put the link for that below in the show notes. But this idea of being a nomadic soul, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. It's like you said, physically traveling or being in connection or in community with other people just in general, even if that's here in your local area. You are trying things on, you're experimenting, you are seeing what aligns, what doesn't align. It's that contrast that really helps move us to the next place and propels us to take action, which is a really, really important piece of this. Because, like you said before, if you're just thinking about all of this and you've got ideas about it, but you don't take action on it, it's not going to really go anywhere. So I don't know. I just
Yeah, and
like
I
the
think
idea.
our soul is meant, it has a certain trajectory of growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing the same thing, if you're stuck in the same place, that's a special kind of hell, because you will feel that sense of malaise. You'll feel that sense of like, God, what am I doing with my life? Do you
Yeah.
know why? Because your nomadic soul is saying, come on, get out there, do something. You know? You're meant to grow. You're meant to go to the next stage. And it's up to you. You have that duty to put yourself out there and see what more you can do, what more is out there. And you don't have to be the next president. You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to like be a massive philanthropist. It's like just find a place where you feel like you are expanding and you are exposing yourself to a new facet of your
Mm-hmm.
personhood, because that's what is most natural to us. What's not natural is feeling stifled and doing the same thing over and over again. And if it's something that your circumstance does not accommodate, like if you are short of any type of resources like time or finances, do something on the side. Like, have a hobby or just kind of tinker with stuff. You don't have to like get rid of your day job and do like, hey,
Right.
you know what? I'm gonna do an eat, pray, love sort of journey and
Yeah.
don't do that. Like you can do it in a smaller scale, but every step counts, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
No,
Yeah.
100%. These little
Yeah.
small steps really build. I talk about that a lot. Because
Hmm.
yeah, most of us can't just like drop everything and
Right.
to
You
travel
can't,
for
I
a
mean,
few months.
we're living in an economy and it's the real world. Not everyone has that
Right.
luxury, right? And that's definitely not what I'm saying, but it's something that you can do
Hmm.
in whatever situation you find yourself in. The question is, are you willing to prioritize it? Are you willing to give that the time and the energy and the heart that it needs? To
Yep.
grow and to become something tangible and evident in your material world.
100%. Yeah. You've got to be
Yeah,
willing to take a small step. Like, what is the next right step? Don't even worry about
right.
the whole journey right now. Just like right
Mm.
now.
There's
It is about
there's this
priorities.
brilliant book I'm reading right now called Tiny Experiments.
Mm.
And it speaks about taking that tiny step and committing yourself to these kind of tiny quests. I
Mhm.
love it. It's called Tiny Experiments, and I don't remember her entire name, but her last name is Lecompf. It's a French name. She was
Okay.
a ex-Google executive. So I recommend checking that out. She has
Yeah.
some very interesting exercises and frameworks that can help you in taking those small steps and evaluating those tiny experiments that you do as you go along. And yeah, I think it's a great resource for your listeners.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'll link it so people can find it if they're interested. But I'm always down to get recommendations for things like that. So thank you. And thanks for this conversation. I love just opening this dialogue for people because I feel like just opening this up and asking yourself these questions is a really great place to start. It can be a really good first step for people if they're sort of like in that place of just I'm doing all the things and I don't even know where to start. And your book is another one of those resources. So talk to people about where they can connect with you, find out more about what you do, and get their hands on your book.
Yeah. So I just want to close this conversation by telling your listeners, just go easy on yourself. Like, I know this is, this is serious work, but don't take it too seriously. Remember to just have some fun along the way, because I think that's a big part of being a nomadic soul. So where can you find more about me? So you can go to my website, selineshenoy.com. You'll find links to my podcast, the Dreamcatcher podcast, and my book, The Nomadic Soul. If you want to know more about the book itself and get more acquainted with the concepts in the book, you can go to the nomadicsoulbook.com. If you want to read my blog, you can go to thedreamcatch.com. If you want to follow me and my musings and my adventures, visit me on Instagram at Seline Shenoy.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll put all of those for people down below to make it easy for people to find you. And thank you so much for being here.
Renee, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Lots of good takeaways there. I hope you guys walk away with some awesome insights. Of course, I'd love to hear what you have to say about today's episode. As always, you can hit me up over on Instagram at Renee Bowen or leave a review for the show at ratethispodcast.com/Renee Bowen. I always love talking about this kind of stuff because you really don't know what you don't know until you expose yourself to it. And you don't have to travel to a different country to do that. You simply need to decide whether you're going to get curious or not, whether you're going to stay where you are, feel stuck, feel crappy, keep doing the same thing that you've been doing over and over again, or if you're going to decide to do a little something different today. And it could be really small, something like I'm going to go to a different place to get my coffee, or I'm going to take a different route to get to work. Change something up about your routine and watch what happens. The key is that you have to be paying attention to what happens. Most people are sort of living hypnotically, kind of going throughout the motions. And I get it. The world is stressful. Life is going to life. But it's up to us to snap out of that trance and decide I'm going to prioritize something else today. I'm going to maybe prioritize myself a little bit more today. I'm going to get curious about what if I change something up? You don't need to know the entire answer right now, but what is the next right step for you? And sometimes that starts with a question. So ask yourself some better questions. If you're feeling stuck, you're feeling misaligned, there's a lot of different ways to get back into alignment. And the first thing I really believe is to get curious and let yourself off the hook and stop beating yourself up because if that worked, it would have by now. So obviously it's not working. If you need help with any of this, you know where to find me. It's the kind of work that I love to do in one-on-one with my clients. And we can get really customized with everything because it's all about you in one-on-one. And it can look how you want it to look, right? That's the beauty of working one-on-one with me, or anyone for that matter, is that it's customized to you. So we get results faster and we can go deeper, which is what I'm all about. I hate doing stuff that's just surface level. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and your day. And thanks again for joining me here today on the podcast. And I'll talk to you soon. Love you. Bye.